The year was 1896 when Minna Bernays, the unmarried and quietly intelligent sister of Martha Freud, moved into the Freud household in Vienna. Her life had taken an unfortunate turn. Her fiancé had died, and she found herself with nowhere else to go. In the Freud home, she found refuge, not only in the domestic space of her sister's family, but in the company of Sigmund himself, who, over time, began to treat Minna less like a sister-in-law and more like a confidant. They spoke late into the night, sometimes about literature, sometimes about politics, but often about ideas. Freud had not yet become a household name, but his mind was already burning with the early theories that would soon transform the way the world understood the human soul. He once described Minna as intellectually stimulating, more so than many of the patients he worked with. There is no surviving letter where Freud admits anything inappropriate, but in the absence of denial and in the deliberate silence of the archives, the questions that remain seem almost louder than any confirmation ever could be. For decades, the relationship between Freud and Minna was seen as one of familial closeness, perhaps unusual in its depth, but never publicly doubted. That changed in 2006, when a discovery in the Swiss Alps reopened a door that many thought had been closed forever. At a quiet hotel in the mountain village of Maloja, a historian named Peter Swales found a guest registry from August 13, 1898. The names signed into the book read Dr. Sigmund Fr. and Frau, a phrasing commonly used to indicate a married couple. The handwriting appeared authentic, and the date aligned with the period when Freud and Minna were known to be traveling. No record places Martha Freud anywhere near that hotel. This single entry, barely more than a line of ink on aging paper, became the center of one of the most controversial questions in psychoanalytic history. Did Freud, the man who unearthed the unconscious and wrote of Oedipal desires, secretly enter into a relationship with his sister-in-law? The document doesn't answer the question directly, but it leaves a shadow, one that extends across the decades. In his lifetime, Freud never addressed the rumor. His letters to Minna are largely destroyed, missing, or inaccessible. The destruction of correspondence has not been officially explained, but it is known that Anna Freud, his daughter, played a central role in preserving and sometimes controlling her father's legacy. Some of the sealed letters remain unopened in archives, protected under clauses that expired only recently. Whether they hold anything of relevance is uncertain, but the care taken to keep them from the public eye has not gone unnoticed. Those close to Freud during his life occasionally whispered things they could never quite prove. One biographer, writing decades after Freud's death, claimed that Minna had once become pregnant and was taken discreetly to have an abortion. There is no surviving medical record to support this, no diary, no statement, only the assertion passed down through uncertain channels. Even Freud's most sympathetic scholars acknowledge that such claims, lacking verification, cannot be presented as fact. And yet they are repeated, retold, always accompanied by a subtle sense of unease. It is perhaps fitting that Freud, the man who taught the world that what is repressed never truly disappears, should have become the subject of such repressed speculation himself. His theories insisted that the unconscious is not silent. It speaks through dreams, slips of the tongue, lapses in memory. And what does it mean then that so many of his own letters are missing? That his family protected his correspondence with such obsessive care? That the man who wrote so openly about taboo, desire, and transgression may have crossed a line within his own household, or may have done nothing at all and simply lived under the weight of misinterpreted affection? Even his students were divided. Carl Jung once remarked on the intense closeness between Freud and Minna, but never suggested it was romantic. Others believed it was Freud's intellectual loneliness that drew him to Minna, not desire, but recognition, a woman who could meet him in conversation where others, even Martha, could not. The story refuses to settle. It does not end with a confession or a denial, but with a question. What do we do with the spaces in history that feel too private to probe, but too human to ignore? Freud's wife was dedicated to pulling the unconscious into the light, and yet in his own story, perhaps the most intimate truths remain buried, not because they are too scandalous to speak, but because they are too delicate to ever be known. In the end, all that remains is a signature in a hotel log, a sealed envelope, a missing letter, and a woman whose life remains mostly invisible in the shadow of a man who claimed to see everything. Whether there was an affair, or whether there was only closeness misunderstood by history, what we're left with is not an answer, but a mirror that reflects the silence between people and the stories we invent to fill that silence.